الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والتسليم على سيدنا محمد الصادق الأمين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما فقهنا إذا علمتنا. Firstly, I think if anyone has any question about what we have said, I would like to have it now. If it clarifies certain points, that I have mentioned. If it's general question or for other subject, will be postponed now. I received a question that this description of the Umayyad family, from where did you get it? I told him this from Musannaf Abd al-Razzaq. This is mentioned in Musannaf Abd al-Razzaq. To the one who is interested in knowing the description given by Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib to the family of the Umayyad people, this was narrated in Musannaf Abd al-Razzaq. Other questions, if anyone has any question related to what we have said, try please to make the noise as much as because I cannot go high, my voice on the back. Yes?
So you mentioned that the individual split. We took up to Muslim lands or for the rest of Europe, and that's why
we haven't come to this point. Perhaps I was not that oriented in it. This the split coming later on. When the Umayyad state finished, in the east. It was, we have a split. We'll come shortly to speak about it. Up till now, we are the conquering of Spain. There's no split here. Other questions? No more questions? Okay. Shall we wait for the map or carry on? Roughly, this is my imagination. I don't know how. Let me see. You have it. Okay, thank you for that. First, I cannot reach it, Perhaps roughly here in this area, the first battle took place, between the Tariq ibn Ziyad and the other troops, from the other side. What I was speaking about here, you have a city called Sabta, and in another end, you have a city called Tanja. Tanja used to be the Muslims of the time, but this one was held by the Qud. Okay, perhaps these are the major points that you should understand about it or be familiar with. That here in the other end, in the other coast, you have two cities who are so important. The one is called Tanja, and it used to be with the Muslim, and the other one called Sabta. Before conquering Spain, it was with the Spanish people, And the first battle roughly here, it took place in this area. Any other questions? Shall we carry on? Yes, you have a question there? How?
How the governor in Syria was appointed?
Governor of Syria.
It was the Khalifa, and usually during the Umayyad time will be appointment, from the previous one. We have some times of fitna that will not be the case, and they will have some sort of fight, as we mentioned about the time after the death of Yazid. Then when his son Muawiyah, the second Muawiyah, he came and he gave up. He did not want to be the governor, and they have some sort of fight between three of the major famous Umayyad persons, and then one of them was successful, and he took over. After that, in most of cases, or perhaps all cases, it was assigned from the previous one, to one person, and they started to make it for two persons, which has very negative, effect in Islamic history. Other questions? Okay, here we have the map, much more shown. This is Septa that we spoke about. This was a very important city, to take over, and was by the Spanish. The other one is Tanja here. The first Shazuna, if you say way up, there is the word Shazuna. There was the first fighting, between the Tariq al-Ziyad and the Muslim army, and from the other side, the other troops. Other questions, or about the map or whatever? Thank you for this. This done by you, or
Teamwork, Shaykh.
teamwork, mashallah. Yes, can we thank Allah? Shall we carry on? Okay, we move from here. This was the first battle happened, between Tariq and Ziyad and the Spanish people. And as what we said, when they were defeated after 7 days of fighting. And then we have a huge amount of, it was described as flooding, of people coming, to Spain from the Arab and from the barbarian people who they formed the largest, community in the African region at that time. Then they had another battle, large battle of those Fulur, because the king was killed in the first one. The other one perhaps is not shown here, it should be further up. It's possible to be shown quickly. Okay, anyway, and we have another smaller battle took place further north. After it, the Spanish army was completely defeated, and the task was to conquer the cities, and open the citadels, in the intermediate, ages. The citadels they have, or the castles, they have very important military stations, and that's why it was one of the important things to be done to open these citadels, or these castles, and then after that, these two major battles which took place. The first one was the most important one, and in it the king was killed, and the other one, some of those gatherings, they stopped there, and again Tariq al-Ziyad, he defeated them, and his task was after that to conquer the cities, and try to get over those castles, which as you may see here, it's much easier, but toward the north, I'm not familiar, but that's what I read. Toward the north, we have the mountains, which are much more higher, and you have citadels or the castles there, which is much more difficult, to get over them. So, after the second battle, Tariq al-Ziyad, he divided his army to different troops, and he went with the bulk or main of it to conquer the capital, which was Tulaytila or Toledo. It's not shown here. Perhaps can we go back to those other maps, because it may be shown the Toledo. And the cities perhaps will be easier shown, in those maps. Anyway,
Watch
so
out, watch Torino.
not that clear, huh?
Here, Shaykh.
This one, okay, this one is Toledo here. This was the capital, you know. So Tariq al-Ziyad, he entered Toledo and sent other troops to conquer other cities, you know, and other castles, you know, in the region. Here, he received the command from Musa ibn Nusayr to stop. Okay, he received the command to stop. And Musa ibn Nusayr, he passed with 10,000 of the Arab and 8,000 of the barbarian people, you know, the original inhabitants, you know, of the area of Africa, and the Arab. He passed with total of 18,000. Why did he ask him to stop? Here we have controversy. We are not going to speak about it, you know. What was the point of ordering him or commanding him to stop? Okay, he commanded him to stop. Why? Some they said because to start with, the Khalifa al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik said, don't go further, you know, deeply, you know, there, and try to have it step after step, okay? The other, they said, out of dunya, you know, just to have the honor of being the conqueror, you know. And you have many opinions, you know, Allahu a'lamu bis-sawab, okay? Then when they came together, both of them, they had a plan to conquer the rest of Spain. And Musa ibn Nusayr, he went north. When you say north, يعني toward the south of France. And he sent Tariq ibn Ziyad east, which is the upper portion, you know, of Spain here. And Tariq ibn Ziyad aimed this way, and Musa ibn Nusayr aimed that way, you know, to conquer the rest of the country. Here, an idea came to Musa ibn Nusayr. What was this idea? It was a great idea, you know, but we know from the description given by the Prophet ﷺ, it's not going to happen, you know, but this was a great idea. He had the idea to do what? To go all the way from the west back to east till Constantinople, to conquer Constantinople from the opposite way. And this was his plan, you know. And apparently, Walid ibn Abdul Malik didn't know about this plan from Musa ibn Nusayr. So, Al-Walid warned him of doing so and commanded him to go back, okay? And apparently it was too easy on him, you know, going north, further north, you know, and then he was commanded to stop and return back to Spain. Here, you have the rest of those Spanish people. They were way up here in the northeast, you know, of Spain. And as described, this was very difficult area, you know. You have high mountains there, you know, and castles, you know, and they were quite few, though. So the general look that they were not important, even though it's mentioned that Musa ibn Nusayr and Tariq ibn Ziyad, they put in their mind to defeat or to conquer or to take over all these places. This was in their plan. But what happened? Al-Walid commanded them to go back to Damascus, both of them, okay? To leave Spain and go back to Damascus. And this, according to the historians, was a negative point, you know, because if they got over that difficult area, that perhaps the whole history will be changed, you know, because from this small gathering, just very small units, you know, of the Spanish people there, they got bigger and bigger gradually, and they are the real people who again defeated the Muslim, over centuries. What was not a story, of years. It was a story of centuries, and as you may imagine, perhaps at the beginning they were secluded there, and tried to defend themselves, and the Muslim did not look at them as a very important target, to achieve or to get over their land. And whenever the Muslims, they have some problem among themselves, or fight against each other, those people will try to expand a little bit, okay, and get over some of the cities, and the Muslim may not pay attention, and gradually they started to expand till they take over the whole land. Okay, and here, as a historian, they say, Musa ibn Nusayr and Tariq ibn Ziyad, the major two leaders, they were aware of this problem and they tried to get over it, But the problem was that they were commanded by Walid, who was the Khalifa, to stop everything and to go back to Syria. And even he did not let them, to govern that area, go back to Syria. And again here we have controversy why he had this command, given. Some they said because he was afraid of making Muslim, go further north, and try to get to Constantinople, as was the plan of Musa and Nusayr. The other they said because he wants his support, because he wants to put his son after him after his death, The third they said because he heard about this land and how rich is this land, and he wants to have these goodies, and other matters brought to him from this land. For sure, they brought a lot of those matters, to him. Here we have controversy, and it's looked by the historian as a negative point, which made the beginning, even though it took centuries, to have it taken over again by the non-Muslims. And this is used to be called these areas Jilliqiya. It's called in Arabic, I don't know what's the English name, Jilliqiya. These are the high mountains, in that northeast region, of Spain, which was too difficult, to go there, and fight. Okay. So Musa ibn Nusayr returned back to the capital here and tried to settle down everything, to make everything ready, and work, because as you may imagine, he needs this, for a new conquered area or land, to have everything arranged according to the Islamic law, not according to what he was there. When he had everything settled down, he assigned his son Abdul Aziz to be governor of Spain, okay, because he should go back to Damascus, and his capital city was Seville. We had it, it was the coach yesterday. You have the word Seville, there. Seville, I don't know where to locate it. And here you have Granada. It should be in this region. Seville is way down, and this was the capital of the Muslim country, at that time. Where is it?
To the left side, to the left.
To the left side.
That's a bit up higher, left side, left. That's it.
Okay, this was the capital, and the son of Musa ibn Nusayr, Abdul Aziz, he used to be there. He assigned his second son called Abdul Malik on Afriqiya, and he assigned in Morocco, and he assigned the third son Abdullah on Afriqiya. Okay, here, as you may see, the graduation, the one who is responsible about the whole region is going to be in Afriqiya, or what's called today Tunisia or whatever. He's going to locate there, and this was his eldest son Abdullah. Then in Morocco he has another son called Abdul Malik, and in Spain in particular he has his third son Abdul Aziz. He was assigned in Seville as a governor, of Spain, and he returned back on year 95. You see, the fighting started on 92, on year 95, he returned back to Damascus with Tariq ibn Ziyad, with his leader, and with them, a lot of those gifts, and goodies, to be given to the Khalifa. Socially, the position of people, of Spain improved, because here you have not the same way, it was before, you have few normal people, and they are going to get the benefit, of everything, and oppress everyone. Here in the Muslim society, it was different story. Even for the non-Muslim, they have some sort of relief, when this was governed, by the Muslim. The component of the community here, it was of three different divisions, of Muslim and two of the non-Muslim. They are the Arab, those are the leaders, and their number is not that much. You have the barbarian people, who came from Africa, and they are the largest bulk, of Muslim there. And you have the converter, the Spanish people who became Muslim. They called al-Muwalladun. This is the term given to them by Arabic al-Muwalladun. These are the three major components, in the Muslim community in Spain. You have the two non-Muslim component. They are al-Mu'ahadun. They are Christian and Jews. Okay, you have the Christian and Jews as non-Muslim, in the Muslim community. This is very important to be known because, to be honest with you, I read in very detailed, book, and I got dizzy, and confused a lot, But the major mainstay that you are going to find a problem, either among one group like the Arab, Yemeni and non-Yemeni, or between the Arab and the barbarian, or between them and the Christian. All the time there is fighting, there is fitna, there is some problem, This may be shown in different pattern, I'm going to touch in it, but this is just should be the idea, okay? Yani here, from the beginning till the end, you don't have significant settlement, of the condition, in the Spain. Whenever the king is quite strong, and just, and you name it, this will be eased down, maybe quiet for a while. Whenever it's not as such, it's going to erupt, be erupted from many areas, and as you may see, this component, may cause a lot of problem among themselves, in their differences. After that, still this is part of the Muslim empire, and the decision is going to come from Damascus, for anything is going to be done, and this was looked as as a superpower at that time, and that's why it was very great government, there, and the governors, of Spain usually they are assigned by the governor of Africa, by the Muslim, okay? And here it was looked at Spain as part of Africa. The decision will not come from the Khalifa in Damascus, no, it will come from the African governor, Muslim governor, who governed the north part of Africa, namely Tunisia and the rest of the other countries there. The one who split them, Sayyidina Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he figured out the importance of this land and make the decision come from the Khalifa directly. Okay? And before Sayyidina Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the decision is made by the governor, in Africa about all matters, of Spain. At the time of Sayyidina Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he changed this rule and make it come from Damascus directly. For sure, this has significant benefit that we spoke about. It may have some disadvantages, because in these old days, it's going to take, a long time, to go all the way to Damascus, and then come back, if you have a question and answer, And it has significant no doubt, significant advantages, and it may have some of the disadvantages, in this regard. The main interest was in that time, most of those governors who got, where did it go?
Screensaver, Sayyid.
Touch the mouse and come back to screensaver.
Okay, no need for this.
The battery's got that. Here we go.
The main purpose was of all governors, to try to go further north, okay? And here we have trials of many Muslims, governors to try to go north. None of them, after Musa ibn Nusayr and Tariq ibn Ziyad, tried to clear the northwest area, okay? Which is very important point here, okay? This is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Churchill, in his memory, he mentioned how things changed, because he was not elected again after the Second World War, and the president of US, he passed away, and they have another president, you see. He give this explanation. Here the same thing, the people, they tend to give this explanation. How accurate, Allahu A'lam. But here what they said, the historian, that Musa ibn Nusayr and Tariq ibn Ziyad, the first one to come here, they had a lot of concern about the northwest, where those original Spanish people, they're still there, whereas many of the governors who came later on, if they are interested in jihad or fighting in the sake of Allah, they will take the other way and try to go to south of France, okay? This was one of the major 10 points regarding Spain per se. There's another 10 point, I look at it, I don't know how accurate, is it, this is regarding the whole Muslim empire or state. In the first phase of the Umayyad government, as you may see, the empire expand all the time. This, after Sayyidina Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, you may have fighting, you may have anything, but no idea of expansion, okay? Even if they defeat the enemy, they will not think about expanding themselves, okay? That's why perhaps many of those governors, even though they fought against south of French, they don't have the idea of expansion. This was not special for Spain. This is, I don't know what the reason behind it, but generally speaking, when you look at the Muslim world in general, this has been changed. This is one of the major changes, what I'm trying to say, that they may fight, they may defeat, they may have victory, but they don't think about expansion. Perhaps the exception of it, Ottomanian Empire, later on, they start to expand, okay? But generally speaking, most of the Muslim government, and most of the Muslim empires, all over the history, after the first 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ, they don't think about expansion a lot, And this gives you a reasonable reason why they were stuck, they were stuck there in Spain, and they did not get very further. Many of those governors, they have their army sent, north, and they fought against the southern region, of France, but they did not have the idea of expansion in this region. Here, to my surprise, and perhaps your surprise, Sayyidina Umar ibn Abdul Aziz thought about pulling off Spain and Libya. He thought about it. Why? Because he was concerned about the future of Muslims, in this land. And those historians who came later on, they said, we hope that he did so, because we have a lot of disasters, happen to the Muslim, in this land. Okay? For sure, when he had this in mind, many of these people, they said that Islam has been well established there, and we cannot take them, away, and they are a huge number and huge community. As we hear nowadays, when you speak in US, they will take the Muslim, they are, huge number here, and we cannot take over, But you see this, I look at it, really I admire it, It may be a strange idea, but Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Aziz, he thought about pulling off, go back and leave this country, because apparently he felt that he will not have enough quality, to defend the Muslim there. Because this was his responsibility. So here, as I said before, the Muslims, they had many battles, toward the north. The most famous one, which was, they said the latest, but it's not the latest. You have some fighting. You may say this is the latest large fighting, and you may consider it as such. Why? Because here it represents the whole Muslim empire. All fighting after is going to represent the split, this state, Spain, which was independent, from the whole Muslim. You got this point? And here the last large fighting, against the people in France was in year 114. Year 100. This very famous battle called Bilat al-Shuhada. And subhanallah, they have the Muslim to start with has the victory there, but then a rumor, among the army that their booties they are about to be taken away, and those barbarians who are the bulk of that army, they were concerned about the booties, and they went back, to Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi, who was the leader of that army, was concerned, and tried to gather his troop again, to keep fighting and have the good victory, and he was killed eventually while he was doing this, and when he was killed, the whole Muslim, they defeated and returned back, And this is, I look at it similar, not exactly the same, similar to what happened in Uhud. Okay, in Uhud, you have the same thing, here you have the armies here in, I think it should be, it should be in this region, in the green, lower green region there. They were defeated, badly, and massive killing among the Muslims, and this considered one of the last large invasion, of southern of France. After that, we have some others, but it was not in this large way that happened, and it was from the state of Spain, which has the split, from the body of the whole Muslim empire. Whereas here, in year 114, it was still under the large body of the Muslim empire, and this, for the Western people, they look at it as a turning point of the history, because they imagine that this was the last trial of the Muslim to try to get over Europe, And after their defeat there, they did not think about it. I look at it as the common Muslim history. It is not only in this point, For me, when I study the Muslim history in all areas, after that you don't have expansion, even though you may have some victory here or there. You see, this is the way I look at it. But all the Western historians, they look at it as a major turning point of keeping the European countries, as they are nowadays, and this was, according to them, the major 10 point there. So here, this is very important point, but personally, I don't look at it as the most important point, because I try to match it with what's going on, what happened, on elsewhere, and we are going to find after that date the same attitude that the Muslim, they will not expand more in their land. After that, and here the Umayyad government in the east became too weak. Okay, and we have split, and we have change on the Khulafa. And the Abbasi tried to take over step by step, and this is going to reflect badly, on all areas, of the empire, including the Spanish area, and that's why you may look at it, here in Spain as expansion and shrinking. Here you stopped, you have a stop, and your border may expand a little bit or shrink according to your relation with your neighbors, okay? And this is, you may look at it, as the common history of Spain till the end of the Umayyad government in Spain, okay? But it started in that time, and it was the case till the end of the Umayyad Khilafah in the east, because it became too weak by this, and as we said before, whenever you have a fitna, everything is going to stop. And that's why here the expansion of the empire stopped, but unfortunately did not return back. And we have few cases, the Ottoman Muslim, they expanded a bit in Europe from the east. You have those people, the Mughal who went to India, and you name it, But in general speaking, you don't have the expansion of the large empire that we are speaking about. We have major fitna caused by the Barbarian who used to be the majority in Spain. This on year 124, and this was taken care of by the Khilafah. After this, we are going to finish the first phase, of the Muslims, in Spain. They were, Spain was like a state of the large empire, Muslim empire. Okay. After that, it became a split, and it was the first state to be independent, of the large body, of the Muslim empire. It was the first one to have this. After 100 years or so, the splits took place, in Morocco and in Africa and here and there, and to some of the, when you read in the history in some ages, the Abbasid Khalifa is only responsible for Baghdad city and the surrounding, Yes, this to tell you about the shrinking and expansion, of the. So the first split took over took place was here in Spain, by the Umayyad famous Amir called Abdul Rahman. We move to so here we end the first stage, of the Muslim being, in Spain, and now we move to the second stage, which is, even though it sounded as beginning as a very strong thing, for the people here, but this is, as you may know, then the career, the future of this land is going to go according to the position of the Muslim in that particular land. Before that, it's not necessary to go by this way, it go by the future of the whole Muslim empire, okay? And for sure, this is logic thing, whenever you have large empire, the future is going to be much better than when you have a small state. Here it started as very strong one, and this is perhaps positive point, for the Spanish people, the Muslim Spanish people, but all over the year, for sure is going to show the problem and the deficiency, the significant deficiency that is going to take place according to the position and the situation of people in that particular land. Here, as if this land has been detached from the other, it doesn't have any relation with the other, even though it's going to be affected by one way or another, strongly and weakly, with most important with the Moroccan countries, and the African countries, behind it or below it, south to it, because as you may know, these are the neighbors, of this Muslim state which has the split. How did the split happen? you see in year 132, the Abbasi Khulafa, they took over the power and they were able to defeat the last Khalifa of Umayyad al-Marwan al-Muhammad, and he was killed eventually in Egypt after he was defeated at the Euphrates river, and he escaped and he was killed, in Egypt. After that, the Abbasids start, which is ugly one, massive killing of the Umayyad family. Whenever they find anyone, who is Umayyad, is going to be killed regardless, Even and sometimes they may give them, a commitment that you are not going to be killed or whatever, and they are going to break their promise right away, and kill the person. And we have very ugly stories, of those matters. I don't know how accurate they are, but this one, just to make us feel how the pressure was on those Umayyad people, in that particular time. All of a sudden, they used to be the princes, and now they are searched on, in all different areas and to be killed, And in one story mentioned, I don't know what river was this, but they said they were following this person called Abdurrahman. Abdurrahman is the grandson of Hisham. Hisham is you may consider the last fairly strong Khalifa of Umayyad people. After him, you have 3 or 4 of them, they are quite weak, and they will govern for 1 year or so. Hisham, he governed for 20 years, okay? He was perhaps the last strong one, even though he's not as strong as the previous one, and he passed away, in year 125. Okay, the whole Khilafah was destroyed after 7 years, of his death, And one of his grandsons called Abdurrahman is Abdurrahman ibn Muawiyah ibn Hisham. His father eventually died in the time of his father, Muawiyah ibn Hisham, he died in the time of his father, Hisham. And this grandson, for sure, he was chased by the Abbasi people, And in one river, I don't know what is it, I tried to find out, but I was not able to find. For sure not in Spain, it should be in Syria or in Egypt, He was followed by the Abbasi people, with his young son. He had a young brother. He was running or escaping with his young brother. And they have this river, and he was able to pass swimming, to the next ditch, of it, or next, and his next edge of it, and his young brother, after swimming for a while, he was incapable of going, so he returned back, and they got him, return back, we are not going to kill you, and he saw the killing of his brother in front of his eyes, how this young brother was killed, by the Abbasi people, and this just to give us the impression that he was under a lot of pressure, to escape from the Abbasi, and he was able to go to Africa. And here, at the beginning of the Abbasi government, you may imagine that the governor of Spain gained some independence, okay? Even though he did not declare that I'm independent, but here you may imagine that the decisions, and everything, is going to be made in Spain. It's not going to come from Damascus, neither from Baghdad, okay? Here in this intermediate period, between the Umayyad and Abbasi Khilafah, the state of Spain, it gained some independence, and the governor of it is not going to be strongly attached to the Khilafah in the east. This person, when he came to Africa, he found some people, who are loyal, the Umayyad people, and they provided him with some money, and he was with his freed slave person, called Badr, and he went all the way to Morocco, and from there he sent Badr to make some preparation for him, in Andalus or in Spain, and Badr, there he was able to collect some of those loyal people, to the Umayyad people, and ask Abdurrahman to come to Spain. And they said this is one of the miracles, that to have a person with this slave slave come to a country and rule that country, and that's what happened. He came, he passed from Morocco to Spain, and was able, for sure, he should have certain personalities, he should be brave, he should have intellect, he should have many of those specialties, to be successful, to get over the power, He fought against the governors, of Spain, loyal to the Abbasi, and he has the ability to take over. This was not exactly on the same year, 132. No, this started in 138. So here you may look at Spain as splitted from the mother original empire in the year 138. He was born in year 113, start his period of time in Spain in 138, and he passed away in 172. This was the first governor of the Umayyad people. They established their state in Spain, which was independent from the other Muslim countries in that particular time. And this was, as I said, I should repeat myself always, this was the first split ever took place, in the Muslim empire. There is Ma'araka called Ma'araka al-Musawwa, was next to Cordova. Cordova is another city north of Seville, I think. What is Cordova here? This one, I think. Here is Seville. We have Cordova. This one?
Yes.
Yeah, this one. This is Cordova. Next to it, he has the major fighting, against the governor of Spain at that time from the Abbasi side, and he divided it. It's called Ma'arakat al-Musawwa, okay? And this was the establishment of his state, in Spain. For sure, he spent all of his life, you see, this total of roughly 33 years, just to oppress any revolution is going to happen. You see, we spoke previously about the different pattern, different style of people you have in Spain. Generally speaking, this is the way I look at it. Up till now, those people, wherever they are, when you try to combine them under the name of Islam, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, everyone is going to come. When you call it a different pattern, then you have different section, and everyone is interested in it. And this is our problem. That's why in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the time of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, sometimes, of the Umayyad people, they were all looked at as Muslim, and they will go with each other. Here we have this problem. This is the common unique factor, about Spain, that always either you have revolution inside, or you have some fighting with their neighbor in this northwest or from the French side. This is by this, I summarize the whole history, of Spain. Okay, and as I said before, whenever you have a strong one, it's going to work it good. Whenever you have weak one, it's going to affect badly the state and the Muslim in the state. In some exceptional matter, it may happen from the south, but this is what the exception, not the rule. The rule is going to happen either from inside the country itself, by revolution here and there, by those different sections. Among the Arab, you have the Yemeni and the Mudari. All the time they have this problem. It destroyed the Umayyad Khalifa in east, and it has its problem here in Andalus also. Then you have between the Arab and the Barbarian people, and then you have between the Muslim and the non-Muslim in Spain, and then you have it with them and those who gathered in the northwest, or they were in the south of France. This is summarized the whole history. Okay, this was the main problem that we are going to find all over the years. So he spent all of his life, Abdurrahman Dakhil, trying to oppress any revolution or anything, and he established his own rules, and all on government, there. The Islam called al-hijab, hajib, that's mean perhaps like a prime minister nowadays. You assign a person that this is the hajib. The hajib, and this word in Arabic means the one who take care of letting the people get to see that person, And here it means perhaps the prime minister, and he used to consult, with the noble people, in Spain, for any decision made. And he was good, in governing. He has some skills in governing, and he tried to increase the number of his army. His army, he said, toward the end was around 100,000, and his special guards was around 40,000. And he speak about 140,000, which is large number, I think, almost. And he started to establish also some warships, for the seas, fighting. As we said, he passed away on year 172. His son took over. His name is Hisham. Was born in year 139. He was selected by his father, even though he was not the eldest one. He was not, and he was chosen because apparently his father found him that he is more eligible, than the elderly son that he had. He was described, this person, Hisham, as righteous person, and humble. Okay. Besides that, he had faced this problem among the Arab, Yemen and non-Yemen, and then the people on the north tried to, but he still prepared the armies which used to be called as-Sawa'if. They call it as-Sa'ifa, and that's mean when you prepare army to fight in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the plan in the Umayyad Khilafah in the east, and they carry on the same thing. Every year during summer he will send a large army to fight in the north. And in his time, religiously what happened? The Mazhab al-Maliki was established here. They used to go according to Awza'i Mazhab. The governor Hisham was praised by Imam Malik. Imam Malik heard about him that this is a righteous person, this is a humble person, and he used to praise him. In one narration, he said, Imam said, I would wish to have such a prince, rule in Medina Munawwara. And that's what he said in one narration. So many of those scholars, in Spain in his time, they traveled to Medina Munawwara, they learned from Imam Malik, and they returned back. And this was the turn point, of having al-Mazhab al-Maliki be dominant, on the Andalus. Before that, Mazhab al-Awza'i, Imam al-Awza'i from Damascus. As you may see, from the conquering of Spain till this time, the main effect come from Syria and Damascus. That's why the people, the fitan, and even the mazhab, it came from Damascus. After that, it became independent, and now they selected al-Mazhab al-Maliki, and you may have other problems. So the famous scholars, of this world, to make the Mazhab al-Maliki famous, they were Ziyad ibn Abdurrahman wal-Shatbun, عيسى بن دينار, يحيى بن يحيى الليثي, and Sa'id ibn Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. When you say now Muwatta al-Imam Malik, this terminology means the narration of Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. Okay, Muwatta al-Imam Malik, we have different narration of it, different copies of it. Whenever you speak about it nowadays, you say Muwatta, it means the copy of Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. If you have the Muwatta at your library, it's from Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, okay? The Hanafi, they all decided to know Muwatta Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan, okay? But when we say Muwatta per se, that means Yahya ibn Yahya. Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi did not hear it all from Imam Malik. He has few chapters. He heard them from Ziyad ibn Abdul Rahman. The other person mentioned here, Shatbun, he heard it from Shatbun, who heard it from Imam Malik. So again, here this king, this ruler or governor of Spain, he was righteous person, was humble, has hard time, to oppress some of the revolution in his time, and religiously, he was the person who, in his time, the Mazhab al-Maliki has the dominance here in this, in Spain, and perhaps after it in the whole western region, of the Muslim countries. And for sure, as you may expect, from this, the scholars and the fuqaha in his time, they have strong position. Okay, and here, not as we may imagine, this differs from one ruler to another, or from one government to another. That the one government who support them, they are going to have very significant influence in his time. The one who put them down, they are going to go down. And this was quite obvious, in the time of the Umayyad people, either in the east or in the west. He ruled for 8 years only, and then he passed away. Then took over his son Al-Hakam. He was born in year 154. He was in the power in 180. He ruled till 206. Here, in his time, he put down the scholars and tried to give more importance to the poets and writers. Okay, and in his time, those became more stronger than the scholars and the fuqaha, and that's why we have this fitna, which was designated by the fuqaha to take him away of power, and this was failed, and that's why he started, follow them, and punishing some of them, or perhaps he killed some of them. And here, that's just to tell you about the change, in the position, between his father Hisham and this person, So he was a strong one, and he was a good speaker, and he was good poet himself, this governor Al-Hakam. I'm sorry about, that he used to have a lot of loyalty and some treaties with the Roman people in Constantinople, just as an action against the Abbasid people. And the Abbasids, they used to have a lot of loyalty with the French people, which for me is too bad. The stronghold in the east, they have good loyalty with the French, not with the Spanish Muslim people. And the Spanish Muslim people, they have the good loyalty with the Roman people, in Constantinople, or what was called later on Istanbul, and not with the Abbasid people. And this is, for me, is too much, and I look at it with a lot of sorrow, because I used, when we were young, we speak, we have learned in the history, about the strong relation between Harun al-Rashid and Charlemagne, who used to be in France. But what's the reason behind it, I did not know. Nowadays, I know why, because he tried to strengthen the enemy of the Muslims, of Spain, and the Muslims of Spain, they try to strengthen their relation with the enemies of the Abbas. And this is not necessarily only in this time, This was the common trend to it during the Umayyad time, in the West, because I don't know if this is reasonable or not, because they have a lot of fighting, a lot of killing, between them and the Abbasid people, and that's why this was the way. And as you may see, those people will be gone, and the one who is going to be tested, and killed, and have all those disasters, the common people, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Here, in his time, this person, they have a lot of revelation, especially in Toledo, Tulaytila, because Tulaytila, it was, as I did not say before, but It was in very high mountain and has very strong castle there, you know. That's why it was not that easy, you know, to control that area. And he has hard time, even though it was under his control all the time, but he has hard time controlling this city in particular, because always we have revolution there in that particular city. For sure he gave up his Sawa'if. Now you know the term of Sawa'if. Sawa'if, that means the summer fighting army, you know, which was sent every year, you know, in summer. What happened now, what is called Norman invasion, you know. Here the Muslims in Spain, they were invaded by large number, you know, of ships. They came from Norman, who are again from the Scandinavian area. They were not Christian at that time, still idols, you know, and they invade significant portion of Spain, killed a lot of Muslims and got a lot of money and returned back. This was the first experience to have it, you know, in Spain, and that's what made him, you know, strengthen his worship, you know, much more. And this happened in during the time of al-Hakim. Then we have his son Abdul Rahman. We have three governors here called Abdul Rahman. Abdul Rahman Dakhil, the first one, the establisher, and you have this, he may be called the intermediate one, and then you have the last one, al-Nasir, who was the greatest. We will speak about him shortly. So this was the intermediate one, who was born in year 176, and he started in charge, you know, in the office in 206 till 238. 238, and he has good skill, you know, of choosing people. And here, was one of the major factor, you know, in the old days, you know, when the governor, he should know the skills very well and should have good choice, you know, of people. This one fit, let's say, for foreign affairs. This one fit for fighting. This one fit for, and you name it. He was described that he has good skill, you know, and choose people, you know, in his time. Again, here you have that second invasion from the Norman people, you know. Perhaps this was the first one, and I'm sorry about it, you know. The first invasion was in this time, not in that time I mentioned before. This is the first invasion of the Norman. It was in year 230, in the time of this. So take away what you said before, you know. This was the first invasion, which lasted for 42 days, and it was massive, you know, against the Muslims, and many of them, they were killed, you know, that time. The other problem which happened, you know, in his time, that Mu'ahadin, we call them the Mu'ahadin, the Christian in his state, they started to show some type of disobedience in his time, or try to challenge and speak badly about the Prophet ﷺ, or about the Islam, you know, in an infested way, you know, just to make the others, you know, angry. This is started to happen in his time, you know, and it was really a problem, you know, in the time of this person, Abdul Rahman also. After him, took over his son Muhammad, was born in year 207, started governing in 238 till the 273. He described as smart and intelligent person, you know. Again, Toledo gave him hard time, you know, during his time, and many revolutions, you know, especially in Toledo. And again, here you have the second invasion of the Norman people, you know, who came again with their worship, you know, and have another problem there. Even though he used to concentrate a lot, you know, in fighting and prepare armies, you know, to go and have the Sawa'id, he tried to cut down in the taxes, you know, and the people. He tried to ease up on people, but still have a lot of money spending, you know, to prepare the armies. And he was even moderate, you know, in his balances, not show that luxurious life that it used to be shown before. As if he was moderate, on showing himself, as a great person, and try to make it easier on the people, but without compromising the other component of it by preparing the armies, to go and fight in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was described as having good relation with his neighbor, in Morocco. In his time, a person called Umar ibn Hafsun, was they described as the most dangerous one making revolution, because his revolution lasted from year 267 to 306. And this person, he was originally Christian and became Muslim, and apparently, according to politics, he will change his religion, all the time, according to the maslahah and advantages, and he was successful and apparently smart in one way or another, of keeping himself, fighting against the government, all this time. And this, as I said, was considered one of the major problem that happened at that time, because even though we have a lot of revolutions, here or there, this was one of the largest and one of the most dangerous one at that time. After him, took over his son al-Munzir, who was born in year 229. He took over only for 2 years, from 273 to 275. He was brave, and feared of, by the others. Then his brother took over. Abdullah was born in the same year, 229, and he took over 275 till 325 years he governed. His time was one of the toughest time, because he spent all of his time, 25 years, trying to put down, or the revolution that is going to happen here or there. You see, this is a common thing, as I said before, and he spent all of his time almost trying to put down, to try to oppress the revolution that may come from this side or the other side. And this is leading us to his grandson. And here he looked at the one who's going to follow him or success him, and he did not find among his children one eligible. His grandson called Abdurrahman al-Nasir, whose father was killed during the time of his father. He chose this grandson to take over after him, and really this was a good idea. This person considered as the most significant and largest governor among the whole Umayyad, called Abdurrahman al-Nasir. Is the grandson of the previous one, and he governed the Andalus for 50 years, 50, from year 300 to the year 315. He was born in 277. Shall we stop here, We'll stop here. And we'll start speaking about Abdurrahman Nasir in the coming, inshallah, talk. This one of the significant ruler, our governor of Spain. If there's any question, please write it down, and we'll try to answer them tomorrow, inshallah.